Sit down with me, let me tell you a story. As long as I've been producing electronic music, I've always wanted a Roland Juno. Now for those of you that watch my channel for the synth videos, you'll know exactly what I mean. But for those of you that don't, the Roland Juno series of synths is one of the most famous and recognizable series of synthesizers ever made. First released in May 1982, the Juno 6, which was followed up shortly after by the more popular Juno 60 and 106, took the synthesizer market by storm. The reason for this, the Roland Junos were among the very first affordable mass market and easy to use analog synthesizers. Unfortunately, these once affordable Juno synths have become collector's relics and are now pretty much impossible to justify buying, as for the same price as they're commanding, you can now get a nearly endless list of more advanced modern synthesizers instead. But still, something has always drawn me and so many others to that simple 80s design philosophy and sound of the Roland Juno. That's when I learned about the Kawai SX-210. Now, the Kawai SX-210 is essentially like the forgotten, unpopular little brother of the Roland Juno series of synths. They share a lot of the same DNA, design philosophy, and even sound. Invented in 1983 by Kawai as a direct competitor, roughly 1 year after the Juno 6 came out, the Kawai SX-210 was released and was almost immediately ignored and forgotten. Because of this massive commercial failure, only a few thousand units were ever manufactured and far fewer are left in working condition today. Fast forward to today. So I was really surprised when I got a message from someone asking to trade for what I had listed for their working condition vintage Kawai SX-210. I hummed and hawed and thought about it for a while, but eventually, being the synth addict that I am, I decided to go for it and bite the bullet. So I don't know about you, but the very first thing I noticed is the Kawai SX-210 sounds unabashedly vintage and retro. This synth sounds like it's straight out of Stranger Things or the Blade Runner soundtrack. It's very hard to get this thing to sound modern at all. So the first quirk that this instrument has, unlike the Juno, is you do everything through the use of one master encoder and buttons. So you press a button and then turn the encoder to decide what you want to edit. Now, when I first sat down to play this thing, I was really shocked at just how good it sounded. I did some digging, and one of the main reasons for this is that it uses the same filter as the original legendary Rev 1 Prophet 5, the SSM 2044 filter. You've got almost the exact same architecture as a Juno with one oscillator with various wave shapes. We've got a saw. We've got a square. And of course, we've got pulse width modulation. You can stack those and you have access to a sub oscillator as well. We've got an LFO as well that can modulate pitch. Volume, pulse width modulation, and a couple other things. Next up, we've got that filter I was talking about and two dedicated envelopes, one for filter and one for amplifier. And we have a couple cool voice modes, including one that the Juno doesn't have, which is to half the voices to 4 and stack everything up for really fat unison chords. We've also got a very useful high pass filter to shave off some of the low end. And finally, the pièce de résistance. Unlike the Juno series, which have their own great sounding analog chorus, the SX-210 has a beautiful sounding, in my humble opinion, maybe even a bit better, analog ensemble effect. Now, using this ensemble effect is basically like an easy mode button for this synth. It makes everything sound better, wider, more warm, more vintage. I can't say enough good things about the ensemble effect. The SX-210 also allows us to save our own patches, and it's got 32 stock ones that can be overwritten. Pretty much what they go for with those sounds are very dated sounding, but in kind of a comforting and nice way. We've got our brass, strings, flutes. You kind of get the idea. Now, because of that awesome ensemble effect, where this synth naturally wants to go is washy strings and washy pads. So that's the Kawai SX-210. It's super simple and quirky, but I think it sounds quite good. Well, how about the cons? For starters, there's no velocity, there's no aftertouch certainly, and there's not even a sustain pedal input. So the way I like to play normally with long held chords using a sustain pedal, you can't do that. You're pretty much stuck to just pressing a key and hoping the sound that comes out is one you like. Similarly, something I have taken for granted with newer equipment is how much quieter and easier it is to record. This is one of the noisiest synths I've ever heard, especially when you turn on the ensemble, but I guess that adds to its character. But overall, even with those limitations, it's still been a ton of fun to use this synth, and for our finale here, I'm going to put it through its paces and take the Kawai SX-210 out of its comfort zone with a heavy, modern dance track. Let's check it out. Well, what do you think? Not bad if I may say so myself. Although I will admit that this track had to be mixed and mastered a lot more heavily than the typical demo tracks I produce to get rid of that noise and get it a bit more exciting. What I will say is this definitely scratches my itch to own a Juno and any other vintage synth, to be honest. I think for my own workflow going forward, I will stick to modern synthesizers for the convenience, but it is really cool owning a piece of history. I guess hopefully the lesson to take away from this is, at the end of the day, as much as these pieces of history are fascinating and sound absolutely awesome, they won't make your music automatically better. The musician playing the instrument is always going to be more impactful than the brand or the company of the synth. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you did. I'm Miles Away, and I'll see you in the next video.